Hi, teammates. This is Sean J. McCall, and I am your host for the Eurostep, where we look behind the scenes of everything European basketball, but not just European basketball, but other also themes as far as different sports around Europe as well. Today is a special day. I have a re-guest, I guess you would call it. We actually did an interview a couple of weeks ago, but it didn't save, so I couldn't upload it to YouTube. And so I asked her to come back, and she was graceful enough to come back on and share her story with you. Serena Benavente is my guest, and she is since 2017 in the coaching profession. She was a professional athlete as well, and she's the only female assistant coach or coach period in the Easy Credit Basketball Bundesliga, the only female one. And yeah, I mean, that's an accomplishment in itself, but there's more behind that. So that's what we want to get into. And before I begin, hit the comment section at the bottom and let me know if there's a question you'd like me to ask. If you want everybody in the whole chat to see it. If not, then you can click on the speech bubble with the question mark at the bottom, and that'll only come to me, and I check it, and I'll try to get your questions in during the live session. So no further ado, let's get Serena in. She should be popping up right about now. Let's see. Yes.
Yes.
We have success.
Let's go.
How you doing this morning?
Good morning. Good morning. I'm doing well, thank you. How about you?
I'm great. I'm glad to have you back. Glad that we can actually record this and
It
get some
works.
information out for the people. So
If that's not a good start to the day,
it's a
let's
great
go.
start to the day. It's a great start to the day. Love to see you smiling this morning. Thank you very much.
Thank you for having me.
So,
It's happy that it works and excited to get to it.
so can you please introduce yourself shortly to the people out there?
Yep. So I'm Serena Benavente. Born and raised in California. Now found myself out here in Germany. Currently in Heidelberg, Germany. Been here for now over 14 years. In Heidelberg. And so I originally came over to play basketball myself for the women's team here in Heidelberg. Had a great ride, played 8 seasons for them, 8.5 seasons for them. Moved up a couple leagues and then transitioned into coaching. My last season that I played, I started working with the men's team here in Heidelberg, the MLP Academics, as an athletic coach part-time. And then once I retired from basketball playing myself, then I went still part-time with the men and the women. So part-time with the women, athletic coach and assistant coach, and athletic coach with the men. And then last year was the first year that I went full-time with the men as athletic coach, team manager, and then, you know, you got your hands for everything kind of thing.
Hats.
You got
Many
exactly.
hats.
You just got to get the job done, right? You know. So yeah, so this is my second year full-time with the academics, and was thankful that they wanted to keep me around. And now also, as you said, you know, second assistant coach with the men, also still athletic and also hands for everything.
So yeah, you know, it's crazy that you know, when you're an assistant coach, you have to do a lot of different stuff. It's not just focusing on basketball. I mean, you have your strength in the athletic side, and but I know you're probably carrying bags. You're
Of course.
doing all kind of stuff, right? That's a part of the rising up, right?
The hierarchy, yeah, sure, of
Eventually,
course, of course.
eventually you won't be carrying no bags.
I don't
You'll
think
have
I'll ever be
somebody
too
else.
good enough for
Yeah.
that.
No, it's not about being too good or anything like that. So, yeah, thanks again for coming on. We're going to get right into the questions. So we're going to jump back. It's funny because we've already done this interview, so I feel repetitive, but no one's
No
heard
one's seen
these
it or heard it,
questions,
right?
right? So,
It's okay.
so I hope we
I don't even
find that
remember your
way.
question, so let's
Okay,
go. It'll be like
let's go. Let's
okay.
go. So you went to college at St. Mary's. How did you end up there? What's the story behind you going to St. Mary's?
Going to St. Mary's, yeah. So yeah, I went played travel teams, club ball, basketball in high school in the summers, and I was fortunate enough to get seen by St. Mary's and offered a scholarship to go there. And right off the bat, it was the school for me. It was only 3 hours, or it is only about 3 hour drive from home, still in California, in Moraga, California. And I was a homebody. Like, I didn't want to go very far from home, which is ironic because obviously I'm sitting in Germany right now doing this interview. But yeah, it fell in love with the campus, really liked the program. The fact that my family would be able to come and watch me live was also going to be huge. And also to be able to go home on the weekends if and when it was possible. Yeah.
Did you have a feeling of homesickness even though you were three hours away? Did you, like, your first year, was it tough to adjust to being away from home? Because that's going to be a reoccurring theme in this interview as well.
Sure. In the beginning, it was a location change, but in the same breath, my goals and my focuses didn't change. So, I was getting a full ride scholarship. I was getting my education paid for. So I had a job to do, so I showed up and did my job as a student athlete, went to class, got that done, went to the gym, went to the weight room, went to the athletic trainer room, all that stuff, to take care of business. And I think that because I was so focused on that, of course, I would be lying if I said I didn't miss home. But again, I was fortunate enough that if I missed home, I could easily go home.
Right.
I know not everybody had that, but that was the advantage and a huge factor as to why I chose St. Mary's.
You just touched on it a minute ago. The fact that student athletes, their days are really structured, right? You get up, in the morning, you got your first class at 8 o'clock in the morning, probably, especially if you're a freshman, and your day is pretty structured. They do everything so that your day is in such that you get the most out of it. And then also with basketball practice and things like that. Was it difficult for you to have such structure in college right at the beginning? Or because for me, when I first went to college, that was crazy. I was like, oh my God, I got to be somewhere every freaking hour. Was it an adjustment for you?
No, I loved it. I really love like organization. I like to be like in order, everything's lined up. I'm
That's
very
why you
old
like
school,
German.
pen to paper. Yeah, exactly. That's why I like it, So I embraced it. I loved it. And no, it wasn't a huge adjustment because, as I said, I love that structure, if you will.
I know you have a pretty crazy injury story when you were in college. Can you go into that a little bit?
Sure. So the very short version is I tore my ACL twice in the same year in my college career. So it was actually the very last home game of my freshman year. We were playing against Santa Clara. I remember that. And yeah, unfortunately, tore it in the game. Crazy pain. Had never experienced anything like that. Obviously went through the rehab process. Grinded it out, had very, very low days. If anybody who's been injured doesn't admit that, then they're lying as well.
Yeah.
Both physically, obviously the physical
Mentally.
pain, but also the mental, emotional identity, searching for an identity. Where do I belong? Do I still belong? Can I get through this? Can I not? I was very thankful. I had a great support system in St. Mary's, of course, with coaches, teammates, trainers, but obviously, as always and until now, with my family and close friends for sure. And yeah, rehabbed it through the year of 2004, summer of 2004, rehabbed it, got it back on point. Then the second day of practice of my sophomore year, inter-squad scrimmage, same end of the court, because of course I tore it at home. So inter-squad scrimmage, same end of the court, closed out, pushed off, retore it. Not as much pain, but I knew in my head, like it's the same feeling. But like walked it off, played it cool, like I'm fine. And of course, I wasn't fine. Ended up redshirting my sophomore year and taking a bit longer to get back. But continue to do it. Same thing. Doubts like, why should I?
Mhm.
Am I capable? But the support system I had was amazing. And yeah, I'm here to tell the story now.
How, I mean, that's it's tough enough to go through one injury, to rehab, to put all those months in, put that time in. And like you said, also mentally, that's just a crazy situation for an athlete. But to go through it twice, like in a very short span, um, how how were you able to focus on your return twice? Like once you're like, okay, twice you're like, oh, come on, not again. How were you able to get
Yeah,
through that?
yeah. I mean, twice in 1 year, it was definitely a struggle, a mental fuck, sorry for the
Right,
language, if you will. Like
no problem.
it was brutal for sure. But the love for the game, like I loved playing the game, like the game was giving me so much. Once I started, I was a late bloomer. Like I didn't start, in elementary school or didn't, grow up with a ball in my hand. Of course, as like for fun, but it was never super serious. And then in high school is when I actually started competing in the mindset of going to club practices, joining a club team, getting extra work in. On the weekends, my family, my parents, and my poor younger brothers, let's hop in the car. We got to drive an hour, hour and a half one way, because where I grew up, like there wasn't a big basketball community. It was more softball, volleyball, all of that. So that transitioned me into, okay, I was a late bloomer, so my love for the game was like still continuing
Right,
to grow when I hit
right,
college.
yeah,
Like I didn't know what I could fully achieve, and so I really wanted to like push that limit. And it was about that, but also I just took every day, like one day at a time, one day in
mhm,
front of me, like, okay, I want to get my range of motion, my flexion a little bit more. I want to get my extension a little bit more. I want to be able to stand on one leg for a little bit longer, so attacking it to where it wasn't attacking the bigger picture, because if you do that, then you'll drown. Like you'll get so consumed with like, oh, I'm not back on court yet, and that can be even more detrimental. And so, as I said, that wasn't just for me. I had a great support system that was able to be like, hey, like you're gonna get there, you're fine. Like your work ethic got you here, got you through the first, rehab process, got you back on court. So why can't you do it again?
okay, this is actually moving more forward than I wanted to, but the fact that you went through that twice, that you really had to like grind it out two times, does that help you now, of course, with what you're doing now when you experience injured athletes in your setting?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I think that my advantage to having that allows me to not only like obviously physically, here are your exercises or whatever, but the mental game, like the mental connection, the relationship that I feel like I'm able to create with players, obviously before they're injured, because you can't just, snap a finger and, oh, you're injured, now we can have a great
Right,
relationship.
right.
I use that to my advantage. Also, being an ex-player, to be able to connect with the players on like a player level. Like
Right.
obviously, I'm like, oh yeah, it's been a while, whatever. But if you've played and you've experienced it, then you know it. You don't have to sometimes over-explain a
Mhm.
situation. And I know as a former athlete, sometimes you don't want to have to explain yourself. You just want somebody to get it. And that's where my advantage is. Like they can say something and I get it, and then they
Right,
don't have to continue,
right,
and it just clicks.
right. Going back to college, I know that the WNBA was never your like end goal. You know, for a
Sure.
lot
Yeah.
of players, especially
Yeah.
when they start young, the NBA, the WNBA, is what their end goal where they say, okay, that's where I want to go. It's not like, especially Americans, it's not like that we grow up thinking, oh, I want to go play for the London Towers when I get older.
Yeah.
I want to go
Sure.
play for Heidelberg. We don't think like that, right? So, what was the moment for you when you started to think, okay, I would like to continue my career.
Mhm.
Let me think about going overseas.
It wasn't until after I decided to take a step away from my career. So,
Mhm,
as you know, I redshirted a year, so I played 5 years for St. Mary's.
mhm,
Through that time, I had a coaching change as well, so that added to like, okay, how do I adjust? What can I control? You know, if I can't control it, then, you know, you got to find a focus that you can. And right after my 5th year, I decided, oh no, I'm burnt out. Like that's been enough. I'm not going to play anymore, or I'm not going to play right now, like continue to look for something. So I took a break. I went, you know, I focused on studies. So I started my master's right after. And actually, an old teammate of mine from college, she was playing in, I believe it was Austria at the time. She came back for, you know, a winter break. We grabbed dinner, started talking. She was telling me about her experience. And long story short, it was like, oh, how could maybe we could play together again overseas. She put me in touch with her agent. Agent suggested, hey, you have taken half a year off. You know, coaches, teams don't know if you're really in shape. Can you still do it? Because obviously, as athletes, we work really, really hard for a long period of time to get to where we're at. But that once you stop doing anything for it,
Sure.
that tanks, you know,
Yeah.
and all of that hard work is gone.
Yeah.
So that was, I respected it. I understood it. And after talking with my friend, I was like, you know what? Like, and again, talking with my family, I didn't want to. It was like going over to Germany. That's where the showcase would be or was. Do I do it? Do I risk it? I mean, that's a lot of money. You know, I had to pay out of my own pocket, or my parents out of their pocket. And yeah, again, support was like, do it. You're going to regret it. You never know. Like, you can go, and what's the worst thing you do? You come back and do the same thing you're doing right now. So, you know, the risk reward, weighing that out. So yeah, went over in Hennef, I think. That's up in Bonn area, I believe. Yeah, so went out there, did the showcase. Thankfully, Heidelberg saw something in me, and yeah, the rest is history.
I mean, that's pretty cool that you know your family said, "Hey, go do it." That you had the support of your family. Because
Yeah,
when I deal with athletes that are thinking about coming overseas or want to come overseas, that's also a theme. It's not cheap to come over here to try out, to do something like that. Um, Risk reward question, but a lot of times people don't have the backings of their families, and
yeah,
that's a big part of it. If you're not one of those players that has an agent or
yeah,
is a major player where you know you're going to go somewhere overseas, it's tough. That's a tough road. And you spoke on it. You took a little bit of time off, a half a year, and a half a year is really not that bad. I experienced players that take 2, 3 years off and
sure.
they want to come overseas.
Yeah,
And I'm
yeah,
like, yo, those gap years kill you. They kill
yeah,
you. You know,
yeah,
but you only took off 6 months, so it wasn't that bad.
yeah,
So you go to the camp, you play well, the team is there, they talk to you. Did you come over because the season was already going on, right?
correct.
So
Yes. So I came
did
out
you come
in
over right
December
away?
of 2008. And yeah, so I talked with the coaches, and at that time the team was in Regionalliga, so third division of Germany.
Right.
At that point, they were killing the game, like they didn't need me whatsoever.
But they
But
didn't
the
have any
coach had
foreigners, right?
sorry,
They didn't have any foreigners,
correct,
right?
yeah, the coach
Mhm.
had the wherewithal to be like, hey, like we're gonna move up to the second division. Second division has foreigners. Our girls have never played with a foreigner. Like there's so many things that go into that. Like that, I think
Different
that's also
dynamic.
underestimated.
Mhm.
It's a clash of cultures. It not only on court but off court. Well, you know, like
Yeah.
I know I've heard stories and experienced myself with it works or it doesn't, and it's not easy. But that's a whole nother, you know, hours on hours of talking just to shoot, you know. Um, so yeah, he said, hey, we have a young team. Quite frankly, we don't need you to move up, but I'm thinking future. If and when we do move up, then you can play, you know, it's basically like a half year plus one, if you will, you
Right.
know. So yeah, I said, you know what? I'm just trying to get back in love with the game. So that's where the love of the game comes back again. So I was tired of it. I was burnt out after my 5 years. I want to find that love again for the game. And he said, yeah, you know, come out and be a mentor, you know, in the sense of we have younger players. They've never dealt with not Americans, sorry, but foreigners. And, you know, just come and lead. I said, cool, like let's give it a go. Like I love the idea of it, so let's try it out. And yeah, so I went home, and actually, a little side note story. So my mom actually came out with me her first time as well in Europe for the showcase. My dad was like, you know what? And that's, again, I'm so thankful for my parents for that. Like, my dad was like, you know what? You both have never been. Take mom. So we went to, obviously take care of business first, showcase. Pop said, you know what? It's around Christmas time, and Christmas out here is way different than in the States. So Christmas markets is like my jam. I love Christmas markets. So during Corona, when they weren't there, I was very, very sad. And then they came back, and I'm like, yes, sorry for the tangent. But yeah, mom and I went to Paris for a few days, came back, flew home for a couple weeks, and then I flew back out in January of 2009.
Okay. So in those couple weeks when you were home,
Hmm.
did you do any kind of like investigating, or like what did you know about European basketball to that point? Because I'm sure
Nothing.
you had the one teammate that played, but I'm sure you didn't have a plethora of information that could be given to you. How did you prepare yourself not only for the basketball, but for living overseas? Did you?
For basketball, to be
Or
quite
both?
frank, no.
Both.
Yeah,
Yeah.
no, for basketball, I definitely didn't. After having the conversation with the coach, in my head, I had such a big expectation of myself to come over, be in shape, be ready to, to get to it and lead and all of that. So I was worried about the basketball, but not because I knew that my work ethic with that and my focus was going to
Right.
be okay. I didn't know what to expect, but I wanted to be over prepared for that. And then for the living side of it, so the first day of the showcase, the Heidelberg coaches talked to me. They said, "Hey, let's put together an offer. Let's talk the next day." Right away, went home that night. Mom and I started Googling Heidelberg, like what's the city like, what's the area like. And at that time, the American military was still here. So there
Uh-huh.
were still like 2 or 3 bases here. So that
Mhm.
made me feel really comfortable of, okay, like at least there will be some sort of American touch here,
Mhm.
It's an international city, it's a tourist
Yeah.
city. So I was feeling more comfortable with not just coming to a completely um, uncomfortable situation. I was going to be living with a host family. I knew that from the start as well. Like they had said that,
That helps.
hey, we don't have a lot of money, whatever. So all of those different things helped me to say, okay, let's do it. Like we took all of these risks now. I have something in front of me, a great opportunity to be able to do it. So, let's jump. But as
You,
far as coming home 2 weeks, it was more
quick.
enjoy family,
Right.
all of that. Like, of course, continue to work out, but it was more, all right, let's go. Like, let's share my experience and let's get to it.
So, I mean, for the basketball stuff and a little bit of the living stuff as well, you didn't have like someone to help you out with that, and that's why here's a shameless plug. That's why this book would have
Oh,
helped
he's
you
got it in his hand.
quite well, if I must say so myself. No, seriously. I mean, that's for people like you that are coming over. That's why I wrote the book, because
Yeah,
it's a different thing. And actually, did I tell you last time that I was going to send you the book? I'm going to send it to you.
I'm
I
still
forgot to tell
waiting
you
on
last
it.
time.
I'm just
Did,
saying. I don't think you have my
yeah,
address, but
yeah,
you didn't tell me.
yeah.
It's all good.
I'm gonna send it
Yeah,
to you anyway.
yeah, yeah.
But that's why there's so many people that don't have mentors or people that can help them out, and that's why I wrote the book 2 years ago. Because yeah, I mean, I see it now with the people that I represent or that I consult with, and a lot of people have no clue, and it helps if you have some kind of basic information to
Sure.
to kind of like help your learning curve. You don't want to
Yeah.
come out here just totally blind, and you have to live it in order to really. Nobody can tell you what you're going to live,
Oh,
but
for sure. That's
and
that's
that's
one
part of
thing
the
that like I
journey.
always connect with people out here, like whether that's the players themselves or
Mhm,
like players' wives, girlfriends, whatever. Like
mhm,
if you haven't lived out here and you haven't been through the process of you're in a foreign country where if you go to the grocery store, if you're on the bus, they're speaking another language. You have no idea what they're saying.
mhm,
And they probably aren't, they're not talking about you, but you still are like, okay,
mhm.
if something were to
Yeah,
happen, then I don't know how to communicate to myself or to them. How can we get past whatever situation it is? Even just going to the grocery store, everything looks different. You know what I mean? Like, And so if you haven't been out here and lived it, of course, especially in my early on years, family and friends like, oh, you live overseas, like you're living the life, you're living the dream. Let's be real, back in 2009, women's basketball overseas,
Yeah.
no. Like I was like paying my way to come out here and play, you know, like that's the thing. And of course it's developed and it's evolved and opportunities and everything's, you know, amped up. But again, for being over here by yourself, if you're single, obviously male or female by yourself, that's tough. If you're over here as you have a partner back at home, you're over here by yourself. Yes, you have the connection, you're by yourself.
Yeah.
If you're over here, and again, I'm going to speak to mostly on, because that's what the last 2 years has been, the male players, and they bring over their significant others, their families, you know, wives with kids, without kids, whatever it is lonely out here. Yes, there are people around you. Yes, there are, you know, like some teams are really good at taking care of the families, or you may have other players, exactly, some teams not. You may have other players' wives or girlfriends or whatever, so you have that. It's tough. So I just like shout out to everybody who's doing it, who's lived it, who's doing it currently. Like, it's not easy. So, and it's nice to find the connections with those people, because as you get into that, the community gets smaller and smaller, but it gets stronger and stronger, I would like to think.
That's right. That's right.
Yeah.
So enough of my shameless plug. Okay. Back to you.
Can you sign it too? Like, can I
of
get like
course.
an individualized sign?
Of course. Come on. So you played from 2008 to 2017 in Heidelberg. You moved up from, you played already in the Regionalliga, where they were going to move up without you anyway, but you were there.
Yep.
You moved from Regionalliga to the second league. You moved to the second league to the first league.
Yep.
My question to you, is there a statue of you somewhere in Heidelberg? Like the Ricky Paulding thing in Oldenburg. They got something like that for you out there in Heidelberg?
They do not. No, they do not.
I'm going to start a petition.
Yeah, for sure. Let me know how that goes.
Okay, I'm going to start that up. We're going to get a what is it called? GoFundMe kind of account.
GoFundMe for exactly. Yeah.
And we're gonna hook that up for you. You talked a little bit about it as well as far as the language situation goes. I learned German mostly because I don't like being dependent on people. I don't like to have to always ask somebody to go to the store with me. I like to be independent. I like to do stuff on my own. Was it hard for you to learn German, and what was your motivation behind it?
Yes, German is not an easy language at all. So in the beginning, again, I think that I didn't think I was going to be out here this long, so I didn't really try to learn the language at the beginning. You know, like I picked up the short phrases, you know, to be cordial with people or fans or whatever it was, you know, like "Hallo, wie geht's? Alles klar?" Like, you know, like the short little buzzwords for sure. So in the beginning, and for me, it was important to learn the food because, like, I really enjoy food. I like to eat, so I wanted to know what was on the menu. But again, it was just very basic survival mode German. I forget if it was my first full year or my second full year, I started working in a grocery store. So I worked in an Edeka, and it was one of our sponsors, and I was just stocking shelves, but I had so much time. Like, we were only practicing in the evening. I was the only professional, so at that time then it was like all of the players were having their own jobs. They were still studying, so they were in school. So we could only practice in the evenings. And so being in the grocery store, I was able to start talking and pick up more phrases, hear it around me a lot more, pick up accents or, you know, stuff like that. And I slowly was like, okay, stocking shelves is not for me. Like, I need to be doing something else. Thankfully, actually, my host family, shout out to Kara Vasilis, like, my host family, they own physio praxis or physio clinics. So then I started moving into that and, like, was cleaning tables and, like, taking out the trash, but, like, was around it and wanted to, you know,
immerse yourself.
Just be busy. Exactly. Fully immerse myself. And then that became more of a necessity of, okay, do I want to do more than just cleaning tables and taking the trash out? Do I want to train? Do I want to answer phones? And so all of that, like, forced me again to okay, what's this phrase? What's that? Let me listen more. Let me try more. I'm also thankful here, again, back to support system as always, but I had teammates and families of teammates who like refused, they can speak English or but they refused to speak English to me. So of course I had to speak German and I had to learn it and I stumbled, fell flat on my face, said the completely wrong things. But when you go to asked about motivation, it was like, I want to be able to communicate. Like I love talking to people. I can be shy at times, but I love talking to people as well. So to be able to communicate that was also a motivation. And then, of course, as I started working, it just became a necessity.
I mean, there's not a lot of Americans that stay over as long as you and I have, right?
Right.
A lot of them go back. So the motivation is not there, and especially for pro athletes, you don't know where your next contract is going to be.
Yeah.
So if you're playing in like when I left Austria, I played 5 years in Austria, and that's where I learned German. And then I left there and went to France. I started to learn French just because of the same reason. I don't like to depend on people. But after that, I knew I was going to go to another country.
Yeah.
So when you're bouncing around, I went from France to Portugal, but Portuguese I didn't try because I knew there was no way in hell that I was going back to Portugal.
Yeah.
Even though I was in a great place. But I wanted to move around. I wanted to kind of country hop a little bit. So I didn't try to learn Portuguese at all. Then I ended up going to then I came to Germany for the first time in Oldenburg, and then I left Oldenburg and went to England, and then for a year, and then I went to Geneva, to Switzerland, where I got to use a little bit of the French that I had learned in Paris before. But as an athlete, you never know where you're going to be, so it's kind of hard to really immerse yourself if you don't know if you're going to be there next year. And I think that's the problem that a lot of athletes have. But it's at some point you kind of start laying roots, like you have, and you want to actually be able to converse with people, to actually communicate to people. And I think that's huge. And without it, you're in a world of trouble over here.
And I love your point, and that's a fair point too, is especially like if you know you're not going to be here and languages are tough. If you're not a language person, like
I am,
it's tough. Like it's difficult. And I think that's I still would say to athletes that are like whatever country they are, whether it's Germany or whatever, like at least pick up like the small little phrases, because you're not in America. You're not in your home country. You're in their home country. So here, like I'm in German's home country, at least a little bit of respect on it. Like, yes,
exactly.
You're getting paid bucks to be over here. Yes, you're playing a game and that's your job, but you're in somebody else's living room. You're in somebody else's hometown. So I think that that would be like not a plea, but just like just respect it a little bit. Know the little phrases, like be cordial, like fans are going to love you and you'll create even a more connection if you're able to throw out some phrases, like they obviously know that you're not going to be coming in like speaking fluently their language, but the fact that you try.
Unless you live in France.
Touche. Touche. But you know what I mean? Like they're going to respect that and they're going to appreciate it. And that just, you don't need to go and have full on conversations. Again, they know you won't be fluent, but like, I think it's a respect thing for sure.
That's a good point that you brought up. Like if you can communicate to the fans, they will love you. It can be broken German, it can be just really bad, but at least they see that you're trying, and that makes you so in German sympathisch. What is that in English?
Yeah, I would have said sympathisch too.
Likable,
Yeah.
Where and I tell clients this as well. If you have the fans on your side, that helps your market value. That will help your market value. It's also a thing about business sense.
It's networking. It's business. It's a business.
And the more people that like you, you never know if you try to speak German to someone in the crowd. That person may be a sponsor and you didn't even know it. That person might be someone who's thinking about sponsoring, but because you try to talk to them, you try to communicate with them, they said, okay, you know what? I like this guy. I like this girl. Let me give a little bit of money towards this person.
Absolutely.
That might help you in the long run. So
Absolutely.
it's really important, especially if you plan on staying somewhere a longer period.
Yeah.
When was it for you where you decided that you wanted to stay longer?
Honestly, in the beginning, it was every year it was a battle. Again, so I was fortunate. The master's program that I started, I was able to do some of that online while I was overseas. And then when I went home in the summers, I was able to continue like in live. So I would go to St. Mary's in the summers and finish up my degree there. Um, so I was very fortunate with that. But after every season, it was like, okay, do I go back and like, is this the time where I stay and finish my master's in at St. Mary's in California, and then I try to find, a real job and grow up, living the Peter Pan life of playing and whatnot in the beginning. And every year it was like, well, no, like I want to travel. So that was another thing, we haven't touched on, but like that was a huge reason as to why I wanted to continue to stay. So after my first half season in 2009, I was able to go to 4 countries in 2 weeks. Like, how do you do that in the States? You
Exactly.
can maybe go to 4 states, like,
But it's the same. It's everything the same.
it's exactly everything's the same. Even California, I'll drive from home to San Diego in 8, 9 hours and I'm still in California. If I do that here, I'm in like a bunch of different countries,
Right.
Exactly. So, it was a battle every time, I'll be honest, when in the beginning, like money was not good. Like I was earning money in the season and then I was burning it in the summer, to survive, and then I'd start over again. So for me, that was very annually, the decision making, and then at some point it was just making sense. Like I was working in said physio practice, like doing small group training sessions, personal training sessions, started catching, speed with that, and was like, okay, like let me continue to explore it. And the point that we just touched on with the sponsors and the connections and the networks and all of that, like again with Cara Bacillus at their practice, like I was able to explore and meet people who like wanted to train, people who saw me coaching both the men's and the women started approaching me and saying, hey, can we train with you, can we do that, so it just opened my eyes to what I wanted to do. I didn't know what I wanted to do when I grew up, once I was done playing. And I think that that's something that also, as a basketball player, or not even a basketball player, as a professional athlete, like you meet different types, ones that already know like, hey, I'm going to play for 2 years and then I'm going to go home and I have like my 5-year plan, and they stick to it. But you also have those that are like, oh, I'm going to play till the wheels fall off and I have no plan after.
Right.
And then after happens and then you're like, first of all, like, who am I? Like the identity of like
identification is crazy.
Like identity crisis is a thing after you're done playing, for sure. And again, if you're lucky enough to have a plan for after, if you're lucky enough to have a support system, know what you want to do, or had always had it, then that's great. But if you don't, that world's going to come crashing down. And if you're not lucky, you're stuck.
Yeah. Let's move on to coaching. So you started out after you retired. You were coaching in the women's side and also a little bit with the men's side as a physio as well, right?
Not as a physio. I'm not a physio. Yeah, that's definitely been it's been misunderstood. So athletic trainer, like out here, is athletic. So back in the States, strength and conditioning coach.
Right.
So, but in the States, athletic trainer is like, quote, physio for like a team in the sports world. So no physio background, just working with the athletes like on the performance side, performance coach aspect. Yeah.
And so you started with the women and then you kind of slowly started with the men. When you started with the men, was there any hoops or ladders that you had to go through, because you were a woman, or did you have experience any kind of negative reaction to okay, well, maybe we don't want a woman because she can't identify with our athletes? Did you experience anything like that?
I have been very thankful. So this is a question I get all the time. Unfortunately, because it is a thing, like, oh, woman in a man's world, blah, blah, blah. So this is asked me all the time. I have been very fortunate that I've had nothing of that. So my very first year that I worked with the men as the athletic coach was part-time, and that was my last season playing. So I was still playing when I started working with the men. And from that point on, like I whether it was probably the perfect storm, let's put it that way, or a perfect combination. I had players that were very respectful and I had known before as well. And they knew that what I was coming in to bring. And I was able to kind of prove myself from the beginning, from the start. And that mutual respect kind of build up, and I had never had a problem with it. You know, I will say the first coach I coached with, Frankie, had an amazing season with Heidelberg with academics, helped us move up, very spearheaded us moving up into the first division. He helicoptered me as well, for sure, in the beginning. He's Serbian, so he's a Yugo coach, you know. And so in the beginning, I thought it was, female, woman, this, inexperienced, that. Like, it was just a combination of everything. So I don't fault him for that at all. He didn't know how I work, so of course, I almost would have been. It would have been suspect if he wasn't, you know, at every training and to see how I worked. I respect that, because in the end, head coaches have all of the responsibility, and I need to make sure that their people being their staff, are taking care of their players, you know. So in the beginning it was that, but then he also saw and realized what I was capable of and the relationship I had with the players. And like I said, I'm very thankful that I have not had to deal with any of that as far as when it comes to gender.
I mean, regardless of the gender, if you do quality work, people see it. And even if there had have been some kind of negative thought processes, they still gave you a chance, and you then proved that you deserved that. Not because you were a woman, because you were the best qualified person for the job. And I really appreciate that you and I'm really glad for you that you didn't have to really deal with those hoops and things that some women have to deal with just to be able to prove themselves on a men's dominated field. At what point, or no, let me ask it differently. At some point, you have to decide, okay, do I want to keep doing it half and half, women, men? Then the offer comes to do it full time as the athletic trainer for the men's team. Did you have to think long about that, or was that something that it was a natural progression for what you wanted to do with your life?
It was not an easy decision at all. That took a long time to decide. On the one hand, why it was very, very difficult was because, I mean, the women's side is the whole reason why I'm here. You know, like it's the reason why I started the journey. It's the reason why I was able to network. It's the reason why I was able to have the opportunities and the experiences. So for that, like, I had basically grown up with the club, you know, like they had grown up, you know, from third division, and the girls that were in high school, you know, were like now having jobs and all of that. So and myself, I grew up, you know, I made my own personal transition and development in those years with the team. And so it was not easy for me to say, all right, and it was a clean cut. Like it definitely was. But it worked because of, as you said, the natural progression of when I was working with the men's and the women's team, it was with two teams. So I was welcomed in each team. I was a part of each team, but I wasn't really like fully a part of each team. So how it was is like 2 nights a week I'd be with the men, 2 nights a week I'd be with the women. In the morning, the same thing. So I was split, and then on the weekends, it was, you know, guys are away in Leverkusen here, and women are in Freiburg here, and where do I go, and who do I go with, and how does that work? And so that was tough for sure. I was always missing something. Like whether I was, you know, I was a part of the women's team and I was at the game and we had a great, you know, comeback win, but then on the other side I missed, you know, whether if it was a tough loss with the men, I couldn't have been a part of that. If it was a great win with the men, I couldn't have been a part of that, and vice versa. If I was on the road with the men, the same thing. I couldn't experience those highs and lows, and that goes with the sport. That goes with, you know, professional athletics and professional sports, the highs and lows. But you, like, always you bond together with that. Those experiences strengthen the bond to continue to work more and to continue to move forward. And because I was split, it was really tough to go all in on one of them. So also a natural progression was that with the men's team, we won. So we moved up. We were moving to the BBL. And in the last Pro A season, it was already beginning to be a lot. Like I had already started shifting a little bit more to the men because of the demands and because of what was needed. And so it was hoped that I would get an offer. I won't lie. Like it was hoped that I'd get an offer for a full-time position, but knowing like where we were coming from, maybe they wouldn't be able to do it. So when the offer came, I was thankful and grateful that, you know, they saw that I can continue to help the team and be a positive influence there. But of course, on the flip side, it was meaning that I'd have to say goodbye. Goodbye sounds so dramatic. I'm still here. I still see them and all of that. But the focus was going to shift. The time was going to shift. And I'm one that if I'm in it, then I'm in it, and I'm going to give it my all. And that's the decision that was not easy, but it was the most practical one, let's say, for progression.
I think, you know, there's a certain level of trust that you earn when you're, or that you have to earn when you're an assistant coach or athletic trainer. People like that, they bond more with the players. So you have a different level of trust than with the head coach in some instances.
They have to, though.
Especially with physios, athletic trainers, there's a different kind of thing because you're handling their bodies, you're focusing on keeping them fit. There's a little bit more trust needed, you know, that you know their body, that you know what ache and pain there are. And you can't do that if you're not there all the time. So that going back and forth, I can imagine, was incredibly hard. Plus, you're dealing with not just, let's say, 15 players, but you've got 2 teams, you're dealing with 30 players problems. And to kind of keep the overview on that was probably tough. So now you move full-time to the men's team. You're moving up to the BBL. You are now the only female in the ranks of such a position in the BBL. Was there any moment where you kind of took in that situation before the season really started, that you took in that situation and thought like, hey, I'm a trailblazer?
Honestly, no. I didn't. I just was focused on, you know, so let's go from like the season, the summer before our BBL season. So that moving up, like we talked about with like, okay, what can I do to get better? How can I, you know, be prepared? How can I prepare myself? I reached out to almost all of the BBL athletic coaches because I didn't know what to expect. I didn't know what to, you know, do. So in my mind, I didn't have time to think the word, as you put it, trailblazer. I think, okay, how can I prepare myself to not fuck it up, you know, to not get to that level and look like a complete amateur. Like, how do I do that? And so I reached out to, I just cold contacted them, if you will. And thankfully now we have Instagram. Thankfully now we have social media, that I was able to reach out to different athletic coaches and be like, hey, you probably don't know me. Maybe you know the team at least. But I am fortunate enough that I'm able to continue with the team. Can I get your inside perspective? Can you tell me, you know, how does it work? What does it look like on your end? How much time do you get with the guys? What is like? How do you work out with the coach? How's the traveling? Is there a set before games? Is there a set like warm up kind of thing? Which not warm up, but like timing, like all of these things I wanted to know because I didn't want to show up and be like, shit, I don't know what to do with that. And like, you know, palms start sweating and I don't know what to do. So yeah, I never had a moment for that because I was focused on preparing for the next season.
Do you ever think about it now? Because now you're 2 years in, you're maybe getting a little bit more media attention. Do you ever get that kind of girl waiting after a game just to shake your hand kind of moment? Or boy.
And I do have to, I was just gonna say it's not just girls, it's boys as well, that's really, really cool. I love to see that. And of course, now that I have time to process, now that I, you know, am a little bit more experienced. Still got a long way to go, but a little bit more experienced in that. Definitely. I mean, it's not lost on me when I go to a gym and I look at the other bench and, it's all males, or being able to have my colleagues are all males, I think that it's pretty cool. Like I have a very non-conventional way of how I got here. And thanks to shout out to the academics for giving me a shot back in the beginning, again with corporation, with the physio practice as well. And I hope that it just opens the eyes that whether it's male or female, if the person's qualified, then you need to give them a shot. And that comes back to the whole moving forward in progression and development, and it shouldn't matter about the gender. If the person's good enough for it, whether that's the athletic coach, assistant coach, physio, whatever the case is, you want the best for the situation. It makes everybody's lives easier.
Mm-hmm. I can imagine that from the guys on the team, you have a great energy, and they probably feed off that as well. I can imagine that they don't care if you're a woman at all, and they probably never did. Is because players know when somebody knows their shit. They know, they feel that energy. They know they can read through it, and they can really figure out really quick if someone knows their shit or not, and they will react upon that feeling that they have. So I've seen you in the huddles with guys. I've seen guys come to you and things like that, and I think that's a tribute to what you do, because it doesn't matter if you're a male or a woman. Guys know if you know what you're doing. There's also the female ref Ann Panther, and actually I want to get her one here as well. But I can imagine guys don't pay any attention to the fact that she's a woman because she's a good ref. So I really appreciate that you actually don't think about it that much. I think that's kind of refreshing that you don't have that weight on your shoulder, like, am I gonna fuck this up? Or, no, you're just doing your job to the best of your ability, and that's the only thing that matters. Heidelberg's kind of like had an up and down season. They play a great game, and they play two bad ones, things like that. How is your role with the guys to make sure that they're up for a game? Or, I mean, you're a professional, you're going to be up for a game, but do you have any like kind of behind the scenes moments where you maybe pull somebody to the side and say, hey, maybe you can do this and this better? How do you react with the guys on that level?
Yeah, I mean that's it's kind of like what you just said. So first of all, obviously you'll have to ask the guys how they see it and view me. But as we said, and from my side of it, they don't care. Players will see through bullshit. They can smell. I think we said this in the last one, so we got to put it in this. But like, players are the biggest bullshitters. Like they're, you know what I mean. And so you can't bullshit a bullshitter. So in that sense, like, as you just said it, like they know my connection is real. Like they know I'm not bullshitting, and that's why we connect. That's why we bond. That's why we vibe. You know what I mean? And that's organic, and you can't force that. And I love that. I love my relationship with all of my players. Of course, as with any, you have different ones, right. And just as head coach has to figure out his way of connecting and bonding with coaches and communicating with players and communicating with players, that's how I do it too. There are some players like this season, for example, one player, I can say one word, give him a look, and then, all right, cool, let's go. Another player, I got to pull him to the side and be like, hey, like today's the day, like today's your day, focus on this, this, and that, or whatever. And for me, my strength is not in the X's and O's, like the strategy. Like I have said that from like day one coming overseas, also even when it was thought about being coaching, that's not my strength. And I know that. I have learned so much from Jonas and Helka this year already and continuing to, and I will continue to do that. And that's their lane. Like they got that on lock. In the beginning of this season, they were speaking a whole nother language, like blind pig this and step up that. And I'm like, I just started learning, like I learned German. Like I don't want to learn, like it was mind blowing. But now like I know the lingo and I got it, and I can obviously understand what they're talking about now. But in that same breath, like let them do that. Like as you said, I bring the energy. Like, I bring the emotion, I bring the energy. As a player, I was never the most athletic, not the most skilled, but I was bringing energy, effort, hustle, all of that. And that's what I bring to my coaching side. And that's what I know that the players feed off of, and just where I feel my most comfortable. It's not just all that. Like, obviously, I have some brains up here a little bit, but time and place for that. So if I can bring the energy and it makes one player dive on the floor one more time, or a little bit extra, give a little extra hip check or whatever, then I'm here for it. Like, I'm game. Let's go.
Okay, we're almost done. I just got one quick question before I got one last thing. Can you imagine living in Germany full time, like I am? Like, I'm not. You're gonna have to drag me, scratching and pulling to try to tell me to go live back in America.
Sure,
Can you imagine that would be
sure.
something that you would do?
I will never say never to that, for sure. Like, but as you have found out, like, I love living in Germany. I love living here. Um, I've obviously set down roots here. I have a great circle here that keeps me grounded, that, lifts me up when I need it and keeps me grounded when I need it as well. And just the work-life balance that I found here
Right, right.
is I can't say unmatchable, because I don't know anything else. This has been the last 14 years of my life, and like what I've created with that, and I'm proud of that. Like, I left home, came over to a new country, learn a new language, and am able to live a very, very thankful life for that. So never say never. I don't know if my mom's still watching right now, but I know mom and dad would love for me to come home and live, but I'll see them in the summers. Yeah, so never say never. Love my life here, and let's see how it evolves.
I mean, we talked about this last interview as well, the last time we were on, but it's kind of like the Americans, they come over here and stay, or for
Hmm.
a very long period of time. They're usually the same kind of people. Like, they're very open people, they're very
Hmm.
friendly people, and not to say that people who go back home choose to go back home and not friendly or open, but it's weird. I've had many conversations with people that have Americans that have stayed over, and somehow we're kind of like one and the same. It's kind of like a fraternity,
Yeah.
It's kind of weird. So, oh, my computer went out. So, I got one last thing for you.
Mhm.
Actually, I was gonna make a new one, since we've already talked about that one, but I decided I'm gonna keep the same phrases. So I got four phrases,
Okay.
and you tell me the first thing in your mind. It might be the same as before, but actually I kind of hope that, because it was really dope, the answers you had
Oh
before.
no,
That's how I can
pressure.
change it. But you probably already forgot, so that's good.
Exactly.
Um,
I told you I forgot it all already.
so I've got four phrases. You tell me the first thing that pops in your mind.
All right.
Love of the game.
I mean, we've touched on it, right? Like, that's the love of the game is something that no one can touch, and it's what's driven me. The game has given me so much. Like, I can only love it back so much because, again, college education, coming overseas, starting this new life here, like, that's all through basketball, and I love the game so much for that, for sure.
Your dream job.
Never thought it would be, but I think I'm living a dream right now. Like, as we just said, I get to be, I get to go to work in like sport athletic clothes every day. Like, I don't, and I'm not with the coaches like on bench with a suit. Like, I'm still in my sweats. Like, I really can't complain. If I could do that for the rest of my life, like, I'm not even gonna worry about it. And I get to live in a country where, it's easy to travel. I'm in a different culture. Like, yeah.
Advice to 10-year-old Serena.
Oh, I remember it was a good one last time, but I don't remember what the heck I said now.
Cool. Run with it.
No, keep grinding. So what you're doing right now is gonna pay off in dividends. Um, you might feel like an outsider. You might, when everybody else is doing their thing and maybe partying or going having fun there, and I'm driving, uh, on a weekend somewhere and not having I'm definitely having fun, but just grind it out. It's gonna pay off. You're gonna live an amazing life that you're gonna be super thankful for. But stay the course. Like, it's really all just gonna pay off.
That's dope. Last one is a new one.
Oh,
Are you
oh,
happy?
heck yeah. Did you see it? No, I mean, I'm thankful to be here doing that you felt that it was even semi-important to have a conversation, to tell
Yeah,
my story. I appreciate you for that. In a bit, I get to go to the gym and hang out with the guys and, help players get better, even if it's just 1% a day. And in the end, oh, the sun's shining too. Like, I mean, things are great right now. Of course I'm happy.
good. That's what I wanted to hear. Thank you for coming on again, for, for for sparing some time to come on again after the mishap that we had before.
All
It
good.
was just as dope as the first time. I was a little bit worried that it wouldn't be the same because we already like kind of touched on
Sure.
everything, but it was dope.
Yeah.
And I appreciate you so much. I will definitely, shameless plug again.
Shameless
I
plug.
will I will definitely get this out to you. Send me your address when we get off,
Yep.
and I'll send it to you tomorrow. And yeah, thank you so
Thank
much.
you,
And
son.
it's a shame you were already here in Braunschweig, and I couldn't come because this stupid soccer game here, and they locked down my whole neighborhood. That's another story.
That's okay. It
But
wasn't a good game for us, so I'm not mad that you weren't there for it.
so get on to your practice, get on with your day. Thank you. I appreciate you, and we're going to be in touch anyway.
Yep, for sure. Thanks, Sean.
Peace. So, teammates, again, great episode. I say that after every show, but I'm really fortunate enough to have some great guests that have great stories. And I may not be the best reporter or interviewer, but my guests usually make it up for me. So thank you for all of you that tuned in, whether you're here for 1 minute or for the 1 hour and 1 minute that we've been live. I appreciate you. If you would like to come back the next time, please follow my page so you see the next guest. I can tell you that I have a guest next Monday and a guest next Friday. And yeah, so I'll be on 2 times next week. Thank you. I'm going to get on with my day. I probably need to start doing something around this house or clean my man cave a little bit. But yeah, be safe. Have a good day. Old head out.